Well, this week was disappointing.
She's alright. She's alright. That girl's alright with me. Yeah.
What's up, nerds? Back again with another week in review video. And this week was a bit of a lighter week. And also a bit of a disappointing week. Specifically one movie, which, such a disappointment. And I'll explain why in a bit. But first, let's get into it as usual. This week I watched 6 short films. And of those 6, my favorite was I Am So Proud of You. My least favorite was My Heroes Were Cowboys. So, I Am So Proud of You. I Am So Proud of You is the 5th Don Hertzfeldt movie that I've watched. And it continues the story from Everything Will Be Okay, of Bill and his mental deterioration. This time it also looks at his family, and how his mental illness has sort of been passed down from generation to generation, how every member of his family has had some kind of mental illness, and how this has led to tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, often including trains. Apparently getting hit by a train is hereditary.
He was a quiet, unassuming man who was eating an onion one day when he was cut in half by a train. He was eventually crippled with lead poisoning and polio, and was killed by a train. He found a message on the answering machine that was sorry to inform him his mother had just died that morning. They said she'd launched into a fit of senile hysterics after skipping her medication, and was hit by a train.
And so that's what this movie is about. This short is about. It's about this history of illness and how it affects people, even if they themselves aren't showing signs of it, how they're affected by the people, by their family having it, and how that then impacts them once they start showing signs of it, and so on and so forth, constantly throughout this family line. Much like with what World of Tomorrow did, where each subsequent entry in the trilogy made the scope grander and grander, and it started exploring bigger and bigger themes. I haven't seen It's Such a Beautiful Day yet, but to my understanding, that seems to be the case, and that's what I'm seeing here from I Am So Proud of You. The themes get bigger, the scope of it gets bigger, and in doing so, it becomes more challenging to watch and more rewarding to watch as well. It becomes all the richer in its themes, all the richer in its exploration, and all the more fascinating in its depth. With this one, with the last one, what we mostly got was an exploration of mental illness, and to an extent also mortality. Here we get that as well, but we also get this exploration of time, of the perception of time, of the way time passes, and of what time itself means. With the short itself saying that time is basically just like a portrait, that we kind of travel along it, but it's always there, always static and unchanging. We just travel along it horizontally, but it's always there. It always exists as it does.
The past never vanishes away, and the future has already happened. All of history is fixed and laid out, like an infinite landscape of simultaneous events that we simply happen to travel through in one direction. Bill made a joke that he could have sworn he'd been told that somewhere before, but the guy just stared at him like he didn't get it.
And so that's what this short explores, how that passage of time exists, to the point where we even see Bill in the future at one point, or what may be the future.
And as the sun continues to set, he finally comes to realize the dumb irony in how he'd been waiting for this moment his entire life. This stupid, awkward moment of death that had invaded and distracted so many days with stress and wasted time. If only he could travel back and impart some wisdom to his younger self. If only he could at least tell the young people in this room. He lifts an arm to speak, but inexplicably says, "It smells like dust and moonlight."
And we see him in the past, and we see his family, and we see all these different points in time, all at the same time. It's chaotic, just like Everything Will Be Okay was. And it's just as disjointed and confusing, but all the richer as well for that reason. All the more beautiful as well. To an extent, I would even say that this one is better than Everything Will Be Okay, just like World of Tomorrow 2 was better than World of Tomorrow 1. Because it gets grander and more philosophical and deeper each time. And so it's just such a phenomenal short for that reason.
Someone sits on the shore and tells him how the waves have been there long before Bill existed, and that they'd still be there long after he's gone. Bill looks out at the water and thinks of all the wonderful things he will do with his life.
As for my least favorite short of the week, My Heroes Were Cowboys. I almost didn't want to pick this one as my least favorite, but I didn't know what else to pick because the other shorts I watched this week were really, really good, and I loved them. And so I didn't want to pick any of those because they were all really good. The only one I didn't have any strong feelings about was this one. And that's sort of the problem. I don't have any strong feelings about it. It's this documentary short about this man, Robin Wiltshire, and his career. He's a horse trainer for movies. And so it's an interesting topic, and certainly one that would make for a good documentary. And here it's not a bad one. I even have it marked as liked on Letterboxd, because after I watched it, when I was done, I thought, okay, this was a pretty good documentary short. The problem is that I watched it a week ago, and I can't remember any of it. I really can't remember any significant details. And that's the problem with this short. It's just so forgettable. There's nothing remarkable about it. There's nothing interesting. There's nothing really to hold on to. The most interesting aspect of it was the cinematography, which was absolutely gorgeous. It's one of the best shot shorts of the year.
You know deep down, you can see it in their eye, there's a better side to this horse. It was still a desire to stay here and work it out. Once I got to Wyoming, I knew this was home. Imagine the power you'd feel if you had 50 horses charging toward you.
But apart from the cinematography, apart from the visuals of it, there's really not much else to talk about with this short, which is why I didn't want to talk about this short, because there's not much to say. It exists. You know, Wiltshire is an interesting guy, I guess. And he's clearly passionate. But the short itself doesn't feel passionate. The short itself just kind of feels like it exists for the sake of existing, which is a shame because there's a lot that this short talks about that certainly could be interesting. Horse training in films could be an interesting topic. Wiltshire could be an interesting man. But none of it is interesting in this movie. It just kind of exists. It kind of drifts through the short, telling us about all these things without letting us really stop and absorb any of it. It just kind of goes through it. And I don't mean the pacing is too quick. I don't mean it just plows through everything and it needs more time. I just mean it kind of just talks about them. It feels almost very much like a college lecture in that way. Just a very well shot one. And so it's hard to talk about it because it just exists. It's informative, I suppose. Maybe. I don't remember. So it's hard to criticize or praise a movie that just pretty much exists. That's really all I can say about it. It certainly exists. It's beautiful, but it just exists.
As much love as you can put into them, they're going to give it back to you. But if you can stand there and hold that, like, it's a world.
And so, with that, we can talk about feature-length films. And like I said, this week was a really light week. There were a few nights where I couldn't watch as many movies, and I didn't watch any movies on Friday. So, this week I only watched 6 movies. And of those 6, my favorite was Little Miss Sunshine. And my least favorite was Halloween Kills. Little Miss Sunshine.
Scholarship is Miss Louisiana Erica Schwartz. And the new Miss America is Miss Kansas Tara Dawn Holland.
Little Miss Sunshine was honestly a delightful movie. It was far more delightful than it really had any right to be. It was also very depressing. It was both like optimistic and charming and hopeful, and also tragic and depressing and toxic. And it was all of both of these things in equal measure, and it's such a weirdly balanced movie. So the movie follows this family, the Hoover family, as they go on a cross-country trip to try and get the youngest member of the family, Olive Hoover, to her beauty pageant contest, the titular Little Miss Sunshine contest.
Cheryl, it's Cindy. Remember when Olive was here last month? She was runner-up in the regional Little Miss Sunshine. Well, they just called right now and said the girl who won had to forfeit her crown. I don't know why, something about diet pills, but anyway, now she has a place in the state contest in Redondo Beach. They want to make sure she makes it. Have them call right away. Well, this number is...
I won!
Stop finishing dinner!
I finished!
And the family is comprised of a few members. There's Olive herself, who's played by Abigail Breslin, and who was nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. Then there's her older brother Dwayne, played by Paul Dano. Then there are their parents, Richard Hoover, who's played by Greg Kinnear, and Cheryl Hoover, who's played by Toni Collette. Then there's the grandfather, Edwin Hoover, who's played by Alan Arkin, and who actually won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor that year. And then finally, Olive and Dwayne's uncle, Frank Ginsberg, who's played by Steve Carell. And firstly, that cast, absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely perfect. It is astounding how well they all work together. The dynamic between all of the characters is so solidly built, so richly developed, and so perfectly acted by all of them that any of them could have been nominated for an Oscar, and I would have said it was deserving. Breslin especially absolutely sells Olive. She is phenomenal. She's like the linchpin of the family, holding it all together. She's the reason why the film happens, which is why it's weird then that she was put into the supporting actress category, not lead actress, I think. But the Academy is weird about those things. And so she absolutely deserved her Oscar nomination. Arkin absolutely deserved to win his Oscar that year.
Perfect. You're the world champion growler.
Dano, Carell, Kinnear, Collette, any of them could have been nominated for Oscars, and it would have been 100% deserving. I think especially Carell and Dano, they had such a fantastic dynamic between them. The advice that Carell has to give to Dano, the way they talk about life, about happiness, about their like misery and their good times, it's so rich and so well written, and the two of them are perfect in how they deliver it. It's honestly phenomenal. They're honestly phenomenal. Actually, I talk all day about the acting. But the point of that is that the acting serves a higher purpose of allowing this family, this really fundamentally dysfunctional family, to come to life. And because of that, we get the best moments of the movie. Right? Because the movie is all about how this fundamentally dysfunctional family is both toxic and helpful to each other. How they cause each other so much stress, and how they're constantly doing things that hurt each other and hurt themselves, and all kinds of things. But also how they come together when they need to. There's so many moments where it's sometimes small ways, sometimes big ways, these cute little things that they do to help each other out. Especially if it's something that they themselves did to cause each other the misery. For example, when the father, Richard, he goes on one of his rants that he does throughout the movie about how you have to be a winner and everything. And so he does that to Olive at one point as she's about to eat some ice cream. And he tells her, well, if you eat that ice cream, you're going to get fat, and you can't be a beauty pageant queen if you're fat. And so he does that. She starts pushing the ice cream away, and the rest of the family starts eating the ice cream to try and get her to eat it. So that way she can have something she wants.
Does anyone want my ice cream?
Yeah, I like a little. Dwayne, Frank, Olive's not going to have her ice cream.
Yeah, do you mind if I have a little
Yeah,
bit?
let's dig in.
That looks really good.
Boy, I feel sorry for anybody that doesn't want to enjoy their ice cream so early in the morning.
Oh, that looks good.
Yeah. You sure you don't want to have some, Olive?
Ooh, look how pretty
Those
that
waffles are going to be awful lonely in there.
is. Watch this.
Wait! Stop! Don't eat it all.
Or when Cheryl realizes that Edward's most likely about to die, and Dwayne takes that moment to write out to Olive to give their mother a hug.
Whatever happens, we're a family. And what's important is that we love each other. So I love you guys so much.
And this has been after a long period of time where Dwayne has made it clear that he does not like his family. He supposedly hates his family, and yet in that moment, he makes sure that his mother is comforted. It's a small thing, but it reveals so much about his character. A lot of those moments do. The moments where they come together reveal so much about their characters, because it reveals how much they actually feel for each other, even if they don't make that immediately clear. Of course, the main time that this happens is at the very end, when Olive is doing her dance, and the rest of the beauty pageant is like booing her and demanding she be kicked off the stage, and instead the whole family goes up there to dance with her. And it's a really sweet moment. It's a really funny moment. It's honestly the best scene in the movie because it really just shows so many different things, but especially it shows how this family really comes together at their own expense, of their own to embarrass themselves in order to make her feel less embarrassed. And so that way she can just have her fun, which is really the whole point of her doing this beauty pageant. And it's really something that the movie makes clear. It's a contrast between all of those girls and Olive, who's very clearly just having fun. Her dance is probably the most, sure, it's the quote-unquote most risque of them all, sure. But she's just doing it as a little girl having fun, as opposed to all those other girls who really are just there just to win. She is just having fun. And so that's something that the film makes clear, that contrast between the young girls just having fun and the nature of these beauty pageants being highly toxic and hypocritical, especially when they then criticize her for her dance when the rest of the girls are dressed even worse than she is. And so, even though the beauty pageant aspect isn't even the main focus of the movie does still do a great job of showcasing the hypocritical and toxic nature of beauty pageants. But the main focus is on the family, is on the Hoover family. And their family is incredibly written. The movie even won Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars, and again, it 100% deserved it. The writing in this movie is so phenomenal. It is so phenomenal. And in reality, this movie, which was nominated for Best Picture too, and that it deserved. This was absolutely one of the best movies of 2006, and probably one of the best movies of the 2000s overall. It is such a phenomenal movie, and such a fun time, despite being labeled as a tragedy, as a tragic comedy, and that's really the best way to label it. It's tragic and hilarious. And then we get to my least favorite movie of the week, Halloween Kills.
But David! Dude, you okay? Hey, you okay?
I was actually excited about this movie. I really was. Because the 2018 Halloween it wasn't the best movie in the Halloween franchise, but honestly, it was up there. It might be like the third or fourth best Halloween movie there is. Fourth or fifth. It might be like the fourth or fifth best Halloween movie there is. And so I was excited. I was really excited about this, especially because it has such a fantastic premise. The idea is that after he survives the trap that Laurie set for him back in the 2018 movie, he goes on his rampage again, and this time the town of Haddonfield itself, everyone in town, gangs up together to try and fight back and kill him. Now, of course, obviously we know that the movie's not going to end with him dying and the town winning because there's a sequel that's already been announced. So we know how the movie's going to end. We know it's going to end with him surviving. That's fine. What's not fine is literally everything else about this movie. The one good thing about this movie that I will say before anything else, that is that, funny enough, much like for My Heroes Were Cowboys, it is beautiful. The cinematography in this movie is honestly phenomenal. There are some truly fantastic shots in this film. For example, at the very end, just before the mob attacks him the last time, there's a shot of him bending over to grab his mask and put it back on. It's fantastically shot. Or the shot of him like emerging from the burning house at the very beginning of the movie. Or the shot of him at his window at the very end, staring into it and seeing himself and just kind of staring into himself. And then, like, mirrored with Laurie doing the same, staring out the window and staring into herself. But everything else is so terrible. It's still not the worst Halloween movie ever. There is still that one movie where Busta Rhymes takes wires to Michael's balls. So, it's still not the worst Halloween movie. But it's down there. God, is it down there. And I truly don't even know where to begin in explaining why it's down there. Because every aspect of this movie is terrible. Even aspects that in the worst of Halloween movies are normally good. Like the soundtrack. It's butchered in this movie. It has this weird techno remix of the Halloween score that just sounds so off.
Leave him alone! No! No!
And the score is used so heavy-handedly, constantly. Like, what makes the original Halloween, or even other Halloween movies, the best of the Halloween movies so good, is its subtlety, especially with the score. The score is subtle and soft and quiet, not constantly blaring in your ears like this one was. Even the directing, which was so great in Halloween 2018, is so weird in this movie. It feels almost half-hearted because it's so dull. It lacks all the tension. It just sort of feels like things are happening, and none of it gets any build-up. Things just happen. And they just happen to people we don't care about either, because the cast in this movie is so bloated. There's like a dozen named characters, all of whom end up dying at the end. Every character we're introduced to has this grandiose moment where where we think they're going to be the main character, and then they just die without any build-up either. They're just constantly dying without any reason for us to care about them. There are so many deaths in this movie. I'm pretty sure I'd have to look at the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure that this movie has the most deaths out of any in the Halloween franchise. Which, sure, maybe that works for other people. Me, when I think of a good Halloween movie, I think of subtlety. The original Halloween movie, only 3 people died. And those 3 people had an impact, all of them. This one, he just cuts through bodies, and none of them have any impact. They're just there, and then they're not. Which is the other thing about him, is that that's not how he even operates. It makes him look like he's this mass murderer, this spree killer. It's like, he feels like a generic horror villain now. A generic slasher. Just cutting through whatever bodies are there supernaturally. And that just fundamentally misunderstands Michael's whole character. Like, the worst Halloween movies are the ones that made him out to be something bigger than he is. He's just a guy who's killing for a very specific reason. What that reason is, the first one didn't make clear. No one knows. What the reason in the second one, he's killing because he's trying to get to Lori, his sister. And that may be the worst aspect of this movie. That's probably by far the worst part of this movie is what it does to Lori. Every single Halloween movie has made it clear that Lori, or as we see in some of the later movies in the original timeline, her daughter Jamie, they are the reason that Michael kills. Even when Lori was removed from the franchise in Halloween's 4, 5, and 6, it was her connection to Jamie that made her the reason why Michael kills. Jamie was still the main character of the Halloween franchise. Even though Lori was removed, her connection to Lori and thus to Michael is why Michael kills. That is the core of the franchise. The dynamic between Lori and Michael. Every single Halloween movie has done that. And this one completely removes that. It completely removes it. And I should have seen that coming. In Halloween 2018, we get a few hints that that's the direction this movie was going to take. Such as the fact that 2018 confirmed that Lori is not Michael's sister. Fine. That's fine. I don't necessarily disagree with that choice. I think it was well handled in Halloween 2, but I can understand why 2018 wanted to remove that aspect. What I don't understand is why the movie has chosen to downplay Laurie's character, especially since 2018 made it seem like it was building up to this epic confrontation between Laurie and Michael. That was the whole focus of 2018, was that it was building up to this epic final showdown between Laurie and Michael. That is what this franchise has always been about, Laurie and Michael. And in this movie, Laurie spends the entire time locked up in a hospital room. She does nothing. For the entire movie, she does nothing. Which would be fine enough if it weren't for the fact that while she's doing nothing, the movie confirms to her that she's nothing to Michael. Michael doesn't care about her. That's what this movie says. Michael does not care about Laurie.
It wasn't him.
Let me find him then. He's after me.
No, he's not.
Frank!
He's not. It was the doctor that took him to your house tonight. It wasn't Michael. It's not about you.
What? Get back in the car! I'm still gonna blow this motherfucker's brains out. Yeah!
He's a 6-year-old boy with the strength of a man and the mind of an animal.
And so what that does is that it removes his motivation. Why is he killing then? What's his point? What's his goal? What's the reason? There is none. And because there is none, what does that make Michael? It makes him a motiveless, mindless killer. Like every other slasher. It makes him generic. And worse than generic, it makes him a knockoff. Because then it also says that he feeds off fear. But the reason why he's still alive is because the town fears him, and so he grows stronger. So essentially he's Freddy now. This movie took the best slasher in horror history and made him Freddy. He's Freddy now. He's a joke. To be fair, a lot of the previous movies made him into a joke, such as the aforementioned Halloween Resurrection. But Halloween 2018 made it seem like they were going to try and make Michael into something scary again, into an actual killer again. And then this one didn't. It made him Freddy. And one should never want to be Freddy. It's disappointing, it really is. I was really excited for this movie, but there's nothing good that can be said about it besides the cinematography. It's such a butchering of what Halloween is. The original Halloween is, in my opinion, the best horror movie ever made. It is a masterpiece of horror cinema. And this one strips it of everything that made it so phenomenal. Halloween, the original one, thrived on subtlety. This one dies on gratuity. So, that was the best and worst of the week. The range for this week: Little Miss Sunshine, 4.5 out of 5. Halloween Kills, 1 out of 5. And that's it for the week. So, what do you think, Babu? What was your favorite movie of the week? Dead silence. Very fair. Babu and I watched *Malignant* a few weeks ago, so he's been really into James Wan lately ever since. Ain't that right, Babu? Yeah, it is. Alright. Say goodbye. Bye-bye.